Yeah. Well, here's the here's the thing though. I have the original email here, and the order clearly says 500 coffee mugs. Corgi butts drive me nuts, and you spell it N-U-T-T-S. And then in your message to me, you said the same thing. It says, please print 500 of these with this picture. You had a little mock-up, and it says in the text here, Corgi butts drive me nuts, to be spelled with two T's. So I didn't question that. I was initially going to, question why you're ordering 500 of these, but the fact that you sold six and people started complaining about the spelling, that's not on me. But I have to go, and I did get the letter from your lawyer, and I don't know how far this is going to go for you. So, but yeah, good luck with the lawsuit, and next time just be clear, and maybe just order 50 and see how that goes, and then if that works out, and I'm sorry your Etsy store got closed down because but really I gotta go here. So thanks for your business anyway. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Hi, welcome to Talk About the Passion. We're back doing our yearly thing. We did 69, 70, 71, 72, 73. I can't do like two fingers at once. What did I stop at? 74. And now we're into 1975. A lot of good stuff happening here. Um, so yeah, let's just get right into it. We're gonna start with Rush, Fly By Night. Um, and this one, I've done a couple of these newer videos, and I didn't really have a script with me tonight. I did write some stuff out because I did have some stuff I wanted to talk about with some of these records. We get a fresh cup of tea. My voice was already hoarse earlier before I was even speaking. So I have this tea with lemon and honey and ginger and orange spices. I put sugar in there. I don't know if I need the sugar. Fly By Night. Rush puts out two records in 1975. This one, and then we'll get into the other one in a second. I get the mic here. In the past, I've banged the records on it, so I'm really going to try to be good about that tonight. We'll see how that goes. Fly By Night, though. Um, the first song that really stood out to me on this record was in the songs on both of these records were the versions that were on the live record, All the World's a Stage, which came out after 2112, the first four records, and then they did this, which I falsely talked about on a couple episodes ago, where I said these bands were doing three records, then a live record, but I think that was only Kiss and Blue Oyster Cult, and probably others, um, but yeah, Rush did four, and then they did four in Exit Stage Left, which we'll get to eventually. But the song that really stood out to me on this was In the End. I kind of liked how it like kicked in with that riff that Alex plays, and like my first exposure to Rush a few years earlier, it was the material from Permanent Waves and Moving Pictures that was on Exit Stage Left, and then Farewell to Kings stuff on there. Farewell to Kings stuff on there, yeah, of course. Um, and then I heard Subdivisions, of course, in between all of this somewhere. And that song, essentially became the reason for a lot of things in my life, especially, hearing that record came out, Signals, in September of 1982, which would have been the beginning of the start of eighth grade in Swampscott. And, Subdivisions made a lot of sense in Swampscott. It was a suburb, and we had lots of, we had jocks, cheerleaders, burnouts, which is the group I belonged to, drama kids, nerds, you name it. But burnouts, we were the kids that we were, 12 and 13 years old, already smoking cigarettes, drinking beer, vodka, and our parent, and then watering the fucking bottles down, and and smoking pot already at that age, which was yeah, it was a good time. And we were listening to Ozzy and Led Zeppelin and Iron Maiden started getting in there a little because Number of the Beast came out, and then I went forward with them, and then kind of went back to Paul Diano, which happened with a lot of these bands I got into. I wasn't there at the beginning, obviously, in some of these bands who started in the early '70s. Um, but Subdivision spoke to me like they, they wrote it for me. I was just sort of like alienated, lost kid in, this high school full of jocks. And I remember, and I was just, just quiet kid. I had those friends, the burnouts, which was, a small group of us. And but I remember one day this kid, his first name was Rob or something, but he looked like one of those fucking Spy versus Spy guys from Mad Magazine. And I had a hoodie on, and he tied my sleeves to the two doors, swinging doors of the theater, until some kid came and rescued me 6 minutes later. I wasn't like crying out for help or anything, but some kid must have walked by and felt bad for me. And but years later, I got I kind of mentally got back at him because I during high school and then after I graduated, I worked at this small supermarket in Lynn, Mass, and I worked with this girl there, and not the best looking woman that you would ever see. I don't want to be mean or anything like that, but it's just, and then just kind of a wet blanket of a person. And then I remember one day she said her fiance or husband or boyfriend was coming in to give her lunch, and this guy comes in, and lo and behold, it's the is that the expression, lo and behold? Is that what you say? My mind lately is, I'll tell you about it in a minute here. Um, it's that guy, the Spy versus Spy guy, and I'm thinking, you're stuck with this wet blanket for the rest of your life. Granted, I didn't have a girlfriend at the time, so the only contact I had with women is if we were playing spin the bottle at someone's house, and if it landed on me, the girl would probably be like, "No, that's actually on Dave next to him." Yeah, I was that kind of kid. A little side note: that same girl, the wet blanket, her cousin was Barry Goudreau from Boston, the other guitar player that wasn't Tom Scholz. And I think maybe her aunt or something was Mary, the woman in the. We're going to get to the first Boston album on the next episode of this, as you'll see, as well as a lot of good stuff. 1976, we're going to be introduced to a little band called AC/DC, who, like Rush and Kiss, are probably going to be with us for a little while, because AC/DC has a lot of wonderful records. Beginning in 1976, we get the Ramones coming up. We're getting into some serious shit, but we're only on fucking record one of 1975 here, so we get a stack here. I'm not going to lift that up. So, between junior high and high school, I kind of converted more to like a punk rock kid, but I stayed friends with the burnouts. And we would spend weekends at various houses of all these kids, and we all chewed tobacco, like Skull Bandits and Skull and Long Cut, and fucking some of the more hardcore kids were the Copenhagen kids. They were like they might as well have been smoking like camel bear asses or whatever we used to call those. And we would watch Spinal Tap. We would watch heavy metal, the cartoon, all sorts of shit. And then in between that, we played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, and yeah, so we played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, and the live record was like a perfect soundtrack to that, especially before we get into the DMs and stuff. Let's I want to talk a little bit about the songs on Fly By Night, because after that we're going to get into the story about one of the dungeon master kids who allegedly robbed a fabric store in Swampscott and then fled to New Hampshire. But we'll get into that in a few minutes. Let's talk about Fly By Night. So, the first record, as pretty much standard. Sorry about that little brain freeze there a minute ago. Like I said, just slow down a little here. I got water here and tea. All the meds have been taken. It's nice. But we get a lot of records to cover here. But so Fly By Night, the first Rush album, a lot of songs about girls and working hard and girls and trying to take yourself a friend. And then the second record is, this is when Neil shows up, and he becomes the main lyricist for the band. And I love that they went from these sort of just like typical rock songs. And the very first song that on this record is he's reading Ayn Rand, is that how you pronounce her name? Anthem, the book. I read it because, of course, I was, when I was listening to Rush and hanging out with these guys, they were kind of these called burnouts, but these kids were hardcore into, they're pretty smart dudes, and they're really into the Dune books, which I like the idea of that, but when I tried, I think I only got through the first one, but there was always way too many. I just had a hard time with sci-fi and fantasy because there was so many names you had to remember and places. And I used to like when they had a map in the book. Um, but yeah, so this stuff was perfect for playing D&D. But Anthem, it's the very first song on the album, and it's got the line, "Live for yourself. There's no one else worth living for. Begging hands and bleeding hearts will only cry out for more." It's like, Jesus, guys, like, how old are you? 23? You're that, just kind of, let's go back to the chicks and working all night. And then, of course, they, redeem themselves with By Tor and the Snow Dog, which is, Beneath, Between, and Behind is also a rad song. It's like, that's a good live one. That's on, I just say that light's on outside. We had like I had wolf prints in the snow out there the other night. And then something came, maybe I won't put it up on it, but there was a pile of like bloody, messy snow, and then a pile of like squirrel hair on the railing. Some sort of bird. I got a lot of stuff going on out there. The snow's starting to melt. Speaking of snow, By Torn the Snow Dog. This sort of epic song on here. Maybe the first one of these. It's 9 minutes. It's got 4 parts to it. And, according to them, it was sort of like a joke that got out of hand. But it's a cool song. I mean, it's corny, um, but it's a fun song. And then Fly By Night, of course, big popular song for them. And like I said, In the End, that's one of my favorite ones on here. And it's just a cool song. And then we get into Caress of Steel, my favorite. I think my favorite of the first 4 of these. This is a reissue. Fly By Night's an old one. But this, see, have I banged anything in this yet? Caress of Steel is probably my favorite of the first few that aren't 2112. But I might even like this better than 2112. This is like I love the cover of this. Um, and aside from I Think I'm Going Bald, which is literally the second song of the album. What are you guys doing here? It's a perfect record. It gets pretty serious. I mean, there's the Lakeside Park. It's kind of like a fun song, but then we get to the Necromancer. And then side 2, of course, is the Fountain of Lamneth, which is, and this is sort of the start of those epic songs that they would do on 2112, of course, Hemispheres, Fill with the Kings. Would that have the Sing the Sex one? The Trees, all those kind of longer songs, Xanadu. But and this was this album, I think, is sort of the beginning of what I love about Rush and what they became after this. And and like I said, this is the perfect soundtrack for going through these books. Don't bang the Fiend Folio on the microphone. This doesn't have the Norse myths in it. I don't have a copy of that. If you have one out there and you want to sell me it for a good price, I'll take it. Deities and Demigods, Fiend Folio. I got the other ones over there, but I don't want to carry it. This is just a fucking prop, right? I'm just trying to. I got props here. I got a pin here. I got another thing over here. But yeah, I have the original Monster Manual over there. Monster Manual 2, which the Player's Handbook, and the Dungeon Master's Guide. I got them all. I even got some old modules over there. If I see them for good prices sometimes in, a hobby store, a bookstore, oh yeah, I'll grab one. I'm looking for the Vault of the Draw right now. If you have that, hit me up on the thing. DM me, no pun intended. So speaking of DMs, there are a number of good dungeon masters in Swampscott, which I've talked about on this podcast before. One of them being Mark Goldman, whose house we spent a lot of time at. Little short guy, really smart, intense, quiet kid. And, once I got into punk rock, I was, hanging around with these guys still, but we were all, sort of outcasts and, and some of the music just didn't cross over. Like these guys didn't care about hearing, Crucifix or MDC, um, Intensified Chaos. You guys know them? Probably not. It's a deep cut. So at one point, I don't think many of us were hanging out with any of us at all. But there was an area in Swampscott called Vinnon Square in Swampscott, which was there was the Swampscott Mall and then, a strip mall and banks and shit down there. And at one point, a fabric store was robbed down there, as well as like some other store where you would go if you didn't want to feel threatened by the staff. Like you're not going to rob a gun store or a liquor store because those guys always have a bat or something out of it or a button. But a fabric store, like, two 63-year-old women in there, like, all right, take the $40. So this shows up in the newspaper, and they describe the guy, and it's fucking Mark Goldman. I mean, it's denim jacket. He literally had a denim. We were all wore denim jackets. I'm gonna put some pictures of Mark Goldman on here in a minute, that I got recently from a friend's Facebook page. And both of them, he's got a hat pulled over his eyes, so he was even hiding then. But you can see we're all in denim. I'm not in any of these pictures, particular ones. But anyway, this guy he was short, had a denim jacket. I think he used a knife and had a bandana around his face. And he used to wear a bandana on his head, on his neck. And then nobody ever heard from him again. And then I feel like at one point I saw like a mugshot of him online, and he kind of disappeared. And then, I Googled his name recently, and there was another dungeon. Name all the dungeon masters in Swampscott if you want, but I'm not going to do that. I think I talk about it on the Into Another episode, which tracks. We got some good ones coming up here. This guy, Bill Butler, who was a little older, he was definitely a very smart guy, but he died in 2015, I think, a decade ago. So I found the page from the obituary from a funeral home, and in the comments, Bill Butler was a very nice guy. Sad to hear this. Mark Goldman. So he's out there. Good things. Maybe they get computers in jail, or maybe he's free and out there. So good for him. If you're out there, Mark, and that wasn't you that did that robbery, I apologize if you see this and you want to hit me up. Go fucking talk about the Fiend Folio and shit. I'll be around. Fucking not doing shit. I'm doing this. But yeah, so I don't know why I'm talking about this. We're 2 records into this friggin' thing. We're talking about guys robbing fabric stores. I don't know, but it's it's another story of, just growing up with Rush, the kids and the people you grew up with, and the experiences you have with them. And when I meet Rush fans throughout, that I've met throughout my life, you have these kind of just weird stories, or maybe I wouldn't tell the fucking fabric store robbery guy, DM, to just another Rush fan. Yeah, I probably wouldn't. Anyway, that's what I'm fucking doing here tonight. Take it or leave it. Let's move on to Black Sabbath, which is a fun sentence to say. And here's what I was talking about earlier with the blank mind thing. I pulled all these records out last week. This one's, I think the 1974 one was like a fucking month ago at this point. I'm slow moving here. And I've always recorded these the day after I have chemotherapy because they give me these steroids, and yeah, I can't fucking shut up. So I've probably been talking 40 minutes already, and we're not even. I don't even think I make it to Budgie here, but I have this CD here somewhere. Um, what are we talking about? Oh, so Black Sabbath, Sabotage comes out in 1975, and I pulled all these records out, and the fucking black and that Sabotage isn't here. And I went and looked in my. I went through all the Black Sabbath again. Sometimes I'll put it back in, and it goes way in. It's not in there. I looked under the pile of fucking laundry that's here, and then, but I got the CD here. This is one of those reissues that they did a long time ago at this point. But I got all those up there, and I have the box set up there. But that's just a pain in the ass to pull out this big fucking thing. But the Sabotage box set is great, and the cover of this is amazing, as you know, and the back cover, which they don't really have here. Well, maybe it's in the little booklet. I could also just find a JPEG of it and put it up. Oh, there you go. But these reissues are all nice. They got all sorts of fun stuff inside. I got them all because I collect Black Sabbath stuff, obviously. You knew that, but this record rules. I think some people are a little half and half on this one, but I got the playlist up on my the 1975 playlist up here. But imagine the first time you put this on, a hole in the sky, right in the fucking face, and then that Don't Start Too Late, and then the fucking what. I'll stop swearing. A lot of people think of Symptom of the Universe as one of the first sort of thrash metal songs, and it's just like Bill Ward on this record too is out of control. I mean, we already know he's amazing from the first record. He swings on that first record, and he's a big part of the Black Sabbath sound, which is a big reason why people were pissed when he wasn't invited to some of those reunion shows. And they said he wasn't playing well, but then he proved us. I wasn't one of the naysayers. I didn't really know what his playing was like at that period, but when they did the songs at the Aussie tribute last year, he sounded great. He maybe didn't need to have the shirt off for that performance, but he sounded great. And on this record, especially on this song, the fills he does, and yeah, it's just it's a great song. It's got that weird ending. Um, I love this song, and it still makes me want to jump out a fucking window when it starts. Not like out of the sliding glass door, like have someone throw me through it. And maybe just the screen at this point, so I don't hurt myself. And then I love these. I love Megalomania. That's probably one of my favorite Black Sabbath songs. It's a fucking awesome song. And The Writ is a similar one. It's one of the these mellow songs that get all doomy and heavy. And both of these songs, The Writ is one of the few songs that Ozzy wrote the lyrics to, which is Geezer wrote most of the lyrics. I think Ozzy wrote this and Fairies Wear Boots. And maybe some other, I don't know. Maybe got one or two other ones. But both of these songs were written about, they were having some legal issues at the time. And these songs were sort of about the frustrations experienced from that stuff that was happening. We're of course on the next episode going to get to Technical Ecstasy, which I love now, or at least like a lot of. But in my opinion, Sabotage is sort of the last of the great records with the original lineup. At least a record that's solid all the way through. Like I said, when I got the Technical Ecstasy box set a few years ago, I sort of finally got that record, and I really do like most of that record now. Never Say Die, I'm still back and forth on. I love all the stuff with Ozzy. I love all the stuff with Tony Iommi. I'm even finally, warming up to that later stuff with Tony Martin. I get the box set, and I've slowly been like, okay, I think these should have just been like Tony Iommi solo albums, but hey, he's fucking Tony Iommi. Do whatever the fuck he wants. He wants to call a band that sounds like. We'll talk about those at some point, maybe. I don't know if we'll get too far into those. We'll see. But this record, I love this fucking record, and like I said, I think it's one of the last truly great full record by the original lineup. Some people only go up to like the first four, but yeah, come on, what are you doing? These guys named Led Zeppelin put out. This is I've been buying all these Led Zeppelin reissues of the albums because I only owned Houses of the Holy and In Through the Outdoor. It's kind of a ridiculous Did I bang on that on the mic? Sorry. This one, comes with a poster. I don't even think I've looked at this yet. I might have a frame for that. Next time you're on here, you might see this hung up on my wall. Probably not, but not that much of I got some posters that you probably shouldn't have as a 56-year-old man in your house, but do I really give a shit at the end of the day? Not really. I'm having fun over here. Got fucking Iron Maiden figurines all over the goddamn place. Who cares? Who am I here to impress? So Physical Graffiti. This album rules. Obviously, there's not really many bad Led Zeppelin albums. In double records at the time were sort of a big deal, and but this one starts with one of my favorite songs, "Custard Pie," that funky song that sure, that line, chewing a piece of your custard pie makes me want to throw up in my mouth a little, but that riff, which the Beastie Boys used in Time to Get Ill, I think, from Licensed to Ill. They used a lot of Led Zeppelin. They used Four Sticks on Rhymin' and Stealin'. Trampled Underfoot, another funk, like John Bonham, when you really think about it, he's really the fucking reason Led Zeppelin is Led Zeppelin, and he's the reason they stand far apart above a lot of these bands. And yeah, his performance on he's great on all the records. Obviously, the second record he gets a drum solo. John Bonham, John Henry Bonham. He gets a drum solo on the second album, and but when they really started having him up in the mix was like I was talking about in the last one, was the Houses of the Holy, and then on this one he's just, and then of course the next one, the next two, Presence, and the last one, Into the Outdoor. He's great, obviously. Fool in the Rain. Come on, you ever hear that isolated drum beat from that? It's great. But I have a bone to pick with this guy. Not John Bonham. Cameron Crowe. Fast Times at Ridgemont High, another movie we used to watch at those guys' houses, the Burnouts. I wanted to be Jeff the Spicoli for a long time, which is kind of a sad thing to think about at this point. But there's two scenes in that movie that they get me a little worked up sometimes. The first one is when Mike Damone is trying to sell Cheap Trick tickets to, I think it's a girl, on the stands, on the outside the high school, and he tries to sing Surrender, and he says they just seem a little bit weird. There's no bit. It's just they seem a little weird. Okay, buddy, grow up. And then he's given his friend, the short guy, Arnold, was that his name? Dates, making out with the date. He was going out with a girl, and he was giving him tips on what to do if they were going to start making out. And he said to put on, whenever possible, side one of Led Zeppelin 4, and then Kashmir starts playing from Physical Graffiti, a song when people talk about Stairway to Heaven being overplayed, I think Kashmir is my like over. I like it. If I play the record, I play the whole record through. It's two records. It's a long time. It's a good song. I just it's fucking 8 minutes and 37 seconds fucking long. Um, but it's not. I'll listen to Stairway to Heaven 8 times over that Kashmir. I don't know. Anyway, that starts playing, and the story goes that they were having trouble getting licensing for Led Zeppelin at the time. That was a thing in a lot of these movies, and they finally agreed, but they said they didn't want anything pre Led Zeppelin 4, and they gave him this song from Physical Graffiti, and uh, and then Cameron Crowe, instead of changing it, like editing it out, how he worded it, he left it in there, and he said he blamed it on it was Damone. Damone's an idiot, and he fucks it up. Well, Damone isn't the fucking music director, and he didn't suddenly put the fucking song Kashmir in the movie. It makes no sense. Why are you blaming him? I just thought it was kind of a cop out. Um, anyway, amazing movie. Still ages well. Another little side note, because I always like to see stuff in the background of movies, or like try to figure out where they are. Like Fast Times at Ridgemont High, where I lived in California, um, right where my dad lives right now on Chatsworth Boulevard. Um, there's a red light you're at, and I've been at this red light 5,000 times in my life, and it's the light where Brad is on break from his job, and he's got the pirate's outfit on, and the woman from Heart pulls up in the car. That red light is right on Chatsworth Boulevard. I do put it up on the thing here. But I took a picture there one day, and you can kind of see because the building that's in the background is still the same. It was like a pharmacy or something before, and you can match the trees up to it. When I lived in California, that was the thing I often liked to do, would just go visit these filming locations that were like nondescript shit like that, like the like in North Hollywood, you can go to see the car dealership where she trades the car in Psycho, Janet uh, Janet Leigh. So yeah, I used to like when I see that kind of shit. But anyway, there's a scene in that one, and I don't know if it's the one where Spicoli gets the pizza delivered. It's one of the scenes in the classroom with Mr. Hands. And in the background, there's a guy with a Michael Schenker group shirt on with the famous logo. And don't worry about it. We're gonna get to Michael Schenker on this podcast. You don't fucking worry about that. Um, but yeah, Physical Graffiti. What else is there to say about that fucking record? Or we got to move on. We got a bunch here. Like I said, I don't know how long I've been talking, but I got a lot in me here. Zappa puts out. Yeah, we're going to Frank Zappa. Sorry. Um, he puts out one of my favorite records. One size fits all. The first song, Inca Roads, which is that's one of my songs I play for people if I'm trying to get them into Frank Zappa. It's that song based on that book Chariots of the Gods. You know, this, it's spaceships coming down into these Inca pyramids and shit. A car. I don't know. It's a weird song, but it's Frank Zappa. What do you expect? But it's sung by George Duke, and his vocals here are fucking perfect. I love George Duke. I love his solo stuff, that real kind of smooth, um, jazzy funk stuff he does, and he's awesome. And he's great in Zappa's band, and I love his vocals. Um, he was always good with Zappa. Um, and there's a lot of silly Zappa lyrics on these Zappa songs, albums, but the good ones and the clever and smart ones, I think, when you really get down to it, or do outweigh the silly ones. A lot of times the song titles might throw you off, and I think his delivery of how he sings is what puts people off about Zappa, and I can understand that. So, anytime I try to like make a mix for someone, which isn't often, I'm not making fucking Frank Zappa mixes for people at 56. But I try to make sure there's not a lot of that stuff where he's like, "Hey, oh, look at this, tits," or whatever. So I try to keep it a little. But this also has one of my favorite songs, San Bernardino, which is this is a fucking awesome song, and it's got some great vocals on it as well. Another essential record, 1975. Um, a lot was happening this year. A lot of good stuff, and in a similar vein to them, in a band that was like not the band itself, but the music of this band was around my house a lot as a kid because they were on A&M Records, but was the Tubes. And their first record is, if you don't have this, you can get this for really cheap, and it's a great record. It's their first record. They're from San Francisco area, and it's kind of similar to Zappa. And this record, the first song on this record, um, for like I said, they were on A&M Records. And I remember one, and I have pictures. I'll put them up on the thing. One of the times we went to visit my dad's office on La Brea Ave in Hollywood, the Tubes were there visiting, and they were all dressed up. And Fee Waybill with the wig, the blonde wig that was, it was like fucking D. Snyder, playing his, character, Quaalude. Those sunglasses at Quay. These guys were all. It was Quaalude, Quaylewd, but obviously a reference to Quaaludes, which everyone was doing at that time. Which, yeah, and I clearly knew about as a 7-year-old, which, I grew up fast in that world. I'm still here, I'm fine. I don't have to fucking look down on shit like that. Like nowadays, people don't want like their children to know that gay people exist or whatever. Come on. I was learning about that shit when I was 7, men dressed as women, and look, I'm still here. Imagine that. But this record opens up with the song "Up from the Deep," which is kind of like a Zappa-y, Steely Dan almost jam, and it's just a fucking great song. It's like, and like it's a no, it's a "Up from the Deep." It's a deep cut by them because they didn't really have many huge songs. There's a couple. There's two really popular ones on this one that we'll get into in a second, but the one thing with a lot of the Tube songs too, and a little more on the next record was they were a very theatrical group, and so a lot of the music gets like really kind of dramatic, and that stuff was never my favorite, which is kind of why I never liked like Meatloaf and that kind of stuff. But still a great band, the Tubes. And the second song on this is, I think, one of their best songs, called Halos. Um, and it's just like a great mid 70s song with some amazing guitar melodies and great horns. Second side of this record opens with Mondo Bondage, which is a song, of course, about bondage. Another one, I'm listening to at 7, 8 years old, which whatever, I'm still here, like I said. And then we get the two. I'm sorry about the squeaky chair. I'll get some WD-40 as soon as I can. Don't worry about it. The tea is cold now. It happens quick. Um, so side 2 has two of their bigger songs. What Do You Want from Life, which is kind of a funny and sad song. It's asking all these questions, and then it sort of ends. The outro has the famous, Fee Waybill sort of acting like a game show host, telling you what you can actually get, ending with, the phallic, a baby's arm holding an apple, which at the time I didn't get, but I probably did find out, when I was 9, 2 years later, what that meant. A baby's arm holding an apple. See what they did there? It's kind of disgusting. Something I probably shouldn't have been knowing about at that age. But hey. And then, of course, White Punks on Dope. Another darkly funny song about, rich, spoiled kids living in Hollywood. And it's got that amazing line, we're white punks on dope. Mom and dad live in Hollywood. Hang myself when I get enough rope. Ouch. The Melvins did a great cover of this song. And if anyone can capture the essence of a song when they do it, they did, Kiss Going Blind. They did the great uh, Pink Floyd, Interstellar Overdrive. There's a lot of great covers. Um, yeah, it's one of their best songs. And the next couple of Tubes records are pretty good. And you can find them all for cheap. This one's definitely worth it. Um, there's a live record from this era that was great. It's a two record set. And hearing all these songs live is you can kind of hear how theatrical the band was. But just it's like an underrated band. And when people think of them, I think they probably think more of the '80s stuff. Talk to You Later and She's a Beauty, which were good songs, '80s songs, fun. And but I like the '70s stuff. And then years later, keyboardist Vince Welnick ended up replacing Brent Midland in the Grateful Dead. There's a lot of mixed feelings about his time in the Grateful Dead, and his death was kind of sad, and the Grateful Dead kind of didn't really treat him with the respect I think he deserved, even though he wasn't a huge part of the band. He had a great voice, and he had a few good songs. These were them, but yeah, rest in peace, Vince Welnick. But the Tubes, definitely, I would check that record out. It's a good, just like essential '70s rock record. It's fun and some great playing, and you can probably find that record for $5. Um, Funkadelic kills it with my favorite music of theirs. Let's Take It to the Stage. Um, I, and this is the first one that well, not the first one, but Eddie Hazel was in jail at the time, so they hired this 17-year-old kid, Michael Hampton, who's all over the record and just 17 years old. So him and Gary Scheider sort of take over all the guitar duties on this record. And, they begin with the promise of they're going to be good to your ear hole, which is, this crazy ass funky song with just the guitar playing in it. And I think it's all this kid, Michael Hampton, is just, it blows you away. A lot of, this happens a lot in these, like we were talking about Michael Schenker on, when he joined the Scorpions or whatever, and he was, 15 or whatever the fuck he was. Um, his play, I don't know, his playing on this is just great. And I always talk about how much I love Gary Scheider, but I think this Michael Hampton kid is all over this record. He just sounds like a seasoned player. Uh, the Better by the Pound, another funky song on here. Um, and then Be My Beach, which is, the Bootsy's all over that song, his vocals. But they all sing on that one. And then the hilarious and heavy No Head, No Backstage. I'll let you look up the lyrics to that because I'll probably get a band or something. But yeah, told the manager there's a girl named Jan. That's probably the only line I can recite on here. You can look. It's a good song. It's fucking funny. I mean, if not, pretty. Well, let's move along. But anyway, yeah, it's called No Head, No Backstage. So you can figure out what's going on there. And then they get right back to the perfect funk groove with Let's Take It to the Stage, Get Off Your Ass and Jam, which George Clinton said some drunk or something came in off the street and played the song or something, or played the solo and plays all the crazy solos on that. And then it turned out it was some guy, maybe David Warren or something, who I can't remember who he played with. He was like the touring guitarist for I don't even remember. I'm sorry. I looked it up earlier and I forgot and I didn't write it in my thing. But anyway, he claims he was the guy. But George Clinton just said it was just some fucking weirdo off the street, which sounds weird, but eh. It's a great fucking song. And then they remake the old, I think it was when they were called Parliament, Baby I Owe You Something Good, which was like an upbeat, like more like soulful R&B song. They do it a little more slow here. It's like plodding and heavy. Stuffs and Things, which is another just essential, just one of those short funk songs. And this record, I think, is yeah, I love all the records from this era, like the one before it, and I think the next one after this is Tales of Kid Funkadelic, which I think also features Hampton on it, and but I listen to this one all the time, and this one is, it's an original copy and it's all scratched up, but this the record sounds fucking great, for being all as beat up as it is. And the other ones I have that are around the same age are also similarly just sound great. So I don't really need a if they and I know if they reissued some of those, I'm sure they sound great, but these I'm happy with what I get. Did you think we weren't going to talk about Kiss? We've been talking all this time, and you didn't think I was going to get to these fucking guys? We're gonna go pretty quickly by though. There's a lot of whoops. Oh, now I ruined the whole thing. Um, One of my favorite guys in like rock world of album covers is this guy down here, like rock steady guy. He's just like, these guys gonna come on stage or what? Good record, yeah. But yeah, so we're gonna kind of go quickly by Kiss because it's just a lot of some of the let's just get into this. Last time we were talking about let's see how fast it takes for Kiss to get like sketchy on their record. In this one, we get it's like immediately in the first song. The opener is a little number called "Room Service," sung by Paul Stanley, and he's in the hotel, and he's kind of bored and gonna go to sleep, and then some woman calls and says, "Would you like some room service?" And to which he replies, "Yeah, I could use a meal." Which yeah, and then he goes through some other. And he doesn't mean like, yeah, bring me up a hamburger and some soup. The lady. But then he talks about another experience on a plane, and the stewardess asks him the same thing. And then the last one, he's with a sweet 16 whose father, witnesses this, and Paul Stanley kind of explains it to him, and the father doesn't even seem to really get that mad. Kind of weird. So yeah, that's the kind of thing that's happening here right away. But then, aside from all those kind of songs, we get fucking Rock Bottom on here, and then we get, of course, this was when they sort of broke through because it ends with Rock and Roll All Night. But my favorite song in here is She, because it's got that fucking riff. And, the songs on this record, as all the early ones, sound best on Kiss Alive, which, as we know, isn't completely a live record. There's a lot of overdubs on this. But it's a fucking, it's one of the best fucking live records ever. Kiss Alive. What are you talking about? I mean, the cover, the back cover, you know, opens with, Deuce, Strutter, Got to Choose, Harder Than Hell, Firehouse, nothing, every Parasite and She back to back. Those, just this whole little run here from side two, because you get like the typical poppy Kiss, Nothing to Lose coming, the song about, we talked about last time. Come On and Love Me, but then you get Parasite, She, Watching You, 100,000 Years, Black Diamond, and then Rock Bottom. I mean, that's some heavy fucking shit right there. And those lyrics on those, maybe She is a little in Watching You, but all the lyrics on those are just like they're just cool hard rock songs. And then of course, you get all the amazing Paul Stanley stage banner on this record, which of course shows up throughout his career. People have made those compilations of all Paul Stanley stage banner, which are pretty funny. Um, I have one of those. It's like 80 minutes of just soundboard recordings of Paul Stanley. In 1975, Richie Blackmore decides he doesn't want to sing about sex and unwarranted sex and stuff like that, and he wants to sing about wizards and castles. So he starts a band called Richie Blackmore's Rainbow. He gets this fellow named Ronnie James Dio to sing. And holy shit, this guy can fucking sing. And Blackmore sounds, re-energized on this first record, um, as he does on the. I think they just did the 3 records. I think this one, "Long Live Rock and Roll," and see what happens. The one with the no, I don't know, "Over the Rainbow." We gotta look this up now. I'm really sorry I'm doing this in front of you like this, but um, Richie Blackmore's "Rainbow" was the one we're talking about here, and then "Long Live Rock and Roll." And jeez, I'm really sorry. Oh, "Rising." Those are the 3 Dio ones. But we're talking about this first one, Richie Blackmore's "Rainbow." Fuck, like "Man on the Silver Mountain," Ronnie Dio, just like immediately, and he's perfect from the start. The blues, the next song, "Self Portrait," that bluesy song, um, is really where he starts to show the side of Dio that we hear for the rest of his career. Up until, I saw him with "Heaven and Hell," and the when he got the Dio era Sabbath band back together, and they couldn't use the name Black Sabbath, so they used that. But I saw them on that tour, and he fucking sounded amazing. I'd never seen him live somehow, and on that record's great. That "Heaven and Hell" record, everything he everything he touched from here. I never really listened to Elf. I heard some of it, and it's fine, but I think this is where he like comes into his own, especially on these like slower ones. "Catch the Rainbow" captures, that range again in that long bluesy song. And that's like a good centerpiece to this record, I think. And then, the only song I don't really like here is that "If You Don't Like Rock and Roll," which I think they should have sold to fucking Foghat or something. But then, 16th Century Greensleeves is one of my favorites here. It's, this one of those fantasy songs that, Dio was the perfect storyteller. And this is like a perfect song for him to sing. Um, so yeah, a great record, and yeah, I say this is an essential record from 1975. 1975. There's a lot of fucking great stuff that's happening here, and I've been talking for a while. I think I don't know, but I want to talk about these 2 records that came out by one of my favorite people in music ever, and that's Neil Young, who released "Tonight's the Night" and "Zuma" in 1975. Um, "Tonight's the Night," probably the darkest Neil record, was the end of the Ditch trilogy, which I've talked about on here plenty of times. And again, I did an episode on the Ditch trilogy um, with my friend Ike Turner, Isaac Turner, which was amazing time. He's always great. I gotta have him on again. He's a fucking amazing guy, very smart, bright, fun to talk to, knows a lot about Neil Young as I do, and we just had a lot of fun talking about those 3 records. Um, but this record was, inspired by the death of 2 of his friends, Danny Whitten, who was in the band, and Bruce Berry, who was a friend and roadie of them, and he was brother Jan and Dean. He was the 3rd brother, or maybe there may have been more. Um, but both of those guys OD'd. More tragically, Whitten died. Like they had rehearsals for the "Time Fades Away" tour, and Whitten was just not cutting it, and Neil fired him, and then literally the next day the guy OD'd. Um, and then Bruce Berry also died, and shortly thereafter. And the guilt from the Whitten one, you can kind of hear it throughout this record, and throughout the songs about him. And Neil would sing about heroin earlier on Harvest with "Needle and the Damage Done," which I guess was also inspired by Danny Whitten's use of heroin at the time. But it didn't really get him until, I believe that was two or 3 years later. So that's a long time to be using that drug. And Danny Whitten shows up on this record because in the middle of it there's a live track from 1970 at the Fillmore East, "Come On Baby, Let's Go Downtown," which features his guitar playing and singing. Niels Lofgren was hired to sort of take over for Danny Whitten. And, Neil kind of instructed him to sort of play like Danny. And even his piano, he plays a lot of piano on this. And even a lot of the piano sounds like how the way Danny Whitten played guitar, which adds like sort of an old school rock feel. And the song, Speaking Out, Neil even calls him out. He says, come on, what does he say? All right, Nils. Nils plays this pretty rad guitar solo. The upbeat song "World on a String," which has some bouncy piano playing from Lofgren, and but drummer Ralph Molina's vocal harmonies, which show up a lot in this era of Neil Young, and I love how those two sing together. And then, of course, there's the ballad "Borrowed Tune," which is sung to the tune of Lady Jane by the Rolling Stones, to the point where he even says, "I'm singing this borrowed tune, which I took from the Rolling Stones, um, alone in this empty room, too wasted to write my own." That's pretty intense line. One of my favorite lines on the record. Brutal. Because Neil feels and sounds like just exhausted here, admitting that he's, so burnt out he needs to fucking borrow a melody from the Stones. And, the aforementioned "Come On Baby, Let's Go Downtown" shows up sort of in the middle of this record, which I always thought kind of cuts the mood in half because it does start to get pretty dark. And I always thought it should have ended it, but I mean, they end it with the way they end it. We'll get into that, but it's a loud song and it's like very I don't know, it's a fucking awesome song. But I understand now why it's sort of in the middle of the record like that, because then after that it's "The Mellow My Mind" is another favorite, which closes out side one, and that sends you into like so many emotions. And Neil Young's voice cracks when he's hitting some of the lines in that, and it's just the whole record. It sounds like it's recorded at 4:45 in the morning, which I think a lot of this was just like very late night record, and they all sound worn out, but they're just the sound like well fucking rehearsed though, and the songs are fucking great, and it's where it sounds like it's recorded late at night. It's a perfect record to I don't really have neighbors, so I can play music pretty loud late at night, which is one plus of living here, aside from the fucking wolves in the yard or whatever I get out here, and fucking hawks eating things in the middle of the night. This record is perfectly listened to late at night, very loud. It's an intense record, and yeah, just fucking. It's my favorite record. So there, it's dark. Yeah, man, just like me. But and it ends with well, we're not even near the end. What the fuck am I talking about? Albuquerque is another song on here that I get the playlist up here. Is a perfect. It was one of my favorite songs. It's a perfect road song, and yeah, I've played the song while driving through Albuquerque, like a fucking dork that I am, just like I did with Nebraska by Bruce Springsteen. But I think I've only gone through there a couple times. But every 4 or 5 times I've been through Albuquerque, I always put that song on. It's a perfect, because most of the times I've been through New Mexico, I'm sort of experiencing the same thing he is, where he has the line "starving to be alone." I just kind of like wanted to get away from whatever the fuck was happening here or in my life, here or there. You just kind of want to be alone. And out on the weekend from is that Harvest, I think. That's another one where it's like same sort of, just you just want to get out on the road and escape and not be anywhere. And Ben Keith's pedal steel on here is fucking awesome. It ties the whole record together, in my opinion. It's like sort of an underrated little song in here. Um, yeah, New Mama. Um, I think rivals some of his stuff with Crosby, Stills, and Nash. They're all do vocal harmonies in that. It's a cool song. Um, and then that's a nice breather before the heavy Lookout Joe, which is just a classic, loud, raucous. Use that word too much. Neil Young song. Um, and then the dark song "Tired Eyes," based on a cocaine deal that went wrong. The four guys ended up being shot, I think, in Topanga Canyon or something like that. And Neil sort of narrates the lyrics to the song, sort of like almost in like a Lou Reed monotone song, or almost voice, or almost like if you're Hank Williams when he does that Luke the Drifter character, which Mick Jagger did in what's that fucking song? Um, I was listening to the radio one night. Tired Eyes. Wait, no, that's the name of this song. Wait, what? Faraway Eyes. Oh, maybe they're anyway. The same kind of thing where they kind of, and then he sort of mumbles the chorus. Tired Eyes. It's almost like he's trying to like wake up from this dream. It's a great song. And then they end with another version of Tonight's the Night, Part 2, which they open the record with. And this one literally sounds like, all right, we're fucking done. It's like 6 in the morning now. We've been drinking, or who knows what these guys were doing at that point. But yeah, perfect ending of the song. And when I listen to this record now, I'm like, oh yeah, that's why they ended it with that, and not fucking come on, baby, let's go downtown. That would have been kind of stupid. Um, but that song rules too. Um, so after this, we get Zuma, which, um, again, like a dork, I went to one time. I probably had a couple of jazz cigarettes in me, and I took a ride to Zuma Beach and sat in the parking lot over there and listened to this record in the car. I wasn't like blasting it because I didn't want to be one of those people where like if someone like knew what I was doing, they pulled in and were like, "Oh, this fucking dork." I would have blamed it on the jazz cigarettes. They're pretty powerful out in California, if you know what I'm talking about. Um, don't be tricked by Zuma, because it's kind of some upbeat songs on here, but it's like half of the songs on this, or a good chunk of them, are about a recent breakup he was going through, and after the last three, extremely dark records, he's still kind of there, but he's starting to, I think maybe that's why it's sort of this white, fun, just weird cover, but it's also got this cactus. So it's like a middle finger in the pyramids. So it's sort of a mix between these sort of surreal, abstract songs and breakup songs. The first song in here, "Don't Cry No Tears," is a classic, just upbeat fucking Neil song. Um, "Pardon My Heart," acoustic song. "Danger Bird," the real slow song. And "Pardon My Heart" has the vocal harmonies with Talbot and Molina on there. "Barstool Blues" is another favorite here, which Neil apparently has no recollection of writing. And then, of course, is the giant song on here. The "Stupid Girl," which is it's another great one here. And hey, did he steal that from the fucking Stones too? They have I've been swearing a lot. Am I gonna get banned from the internet for this? Take a sip of water. I think I might have been talking for an hour here. You all right with that? You've probably stopped after I was talking about the Dungeon Master 47 minutes ago. That's all right. If you're still here, We still got a couple to go. We're almost we're in the home stretch here. Don't worry about it. Um, Cortez the Killer. You know, one of the best ways to hear this song, I think, is on the live record from the live '90s record Weld. But you know, it's fucking great on here as well, and it's just a beautiful song. And a lot of people have covered this song. Built to Spill does a great cover of this. My band Presley, like, do you fucking give a shit? We recorded this in the rehearsal space, and I thought it was a pretty fun song to cover. And I think we played it for like 40 minutes. It's some weird. I have it somewhere, but nobody needs to hear that. We're talking about the actual fucking guy. And then the last song on the record, um, "Through My Sails," feature. It was recorded during CSNY 1974 tour rehearsals. So it has them singing backup song. It's a nice song. It's a perfect song to, you know, let you breathe after this, you know, weird journey you went on in this record. And like I said, I think it's an essential. I think it's an essential Neil Young record. Yeah, just record in general to have. It's a good fucking record. Would I steer you wrong? We're running out of time here. I missed a lot of my favorites, and I'm not going to go through all of them as I have been here. But this one, you know, I always sort of like, oh yeah, The Who, my favorite fucking band. Did you ever like go into the used record store back in the day and you'd see ones where the people filled it in? Yeah, I did too. I did too. This is one of my favorite records. It's fucking dark. You know, it starts with the Slip Kid, and it's got Squeeze Box, which is like, you know, fun songs, but then it's got these real dark, you know, However Much I Booze, Imagine a Man, How Many Friends, you know, really dark songs. Townsend was struggling with alcohol a lot at this time. But then you get the hilarious success story written by Entwistle. And it's, you know, sort of a satirical take on their rise to fame, you know, making fun of Townsend smashing guitars and I'm your ferry manager, who was their, you know, I'm your ferry manager, you shall play at Carnegie Hall. Apparently, they had a gay, very flamboyant manager at the time that I think they were suing. So, a nice thing to call him your ferry manager, but and then, you know, talking about the tax man taking half of the money. But this song was featured in The Kids Are All Right when Entwistle's like walking through the house, like and he's like grabs all the gold records off the wall and then he's shooting him, the skeet shooting him. And that song never ended up on the soundtrack album. So I never knew why it didn't show up there. And you know, Dreaming from the Waist, is a fucking awesome performance by Daltrey on that. So yeah, it's a fucking great Who record. It's a solid, you know. They have like a weird. Their catalog is very weird. Their albums, like the early ones, are very kind of spotty. And then they got the, you know, Tommy and Quadrophenia. There's no real like solid, just like one fuck. You know, they got all these compilate, but I think that's like a perfectly realized, you know, one record. You know, single fucking record, whole way through. I don't know I don't know what I'm trying to say. You know what I mean? Their records are kind of skits and shit, and the ones that were just like singles, or this one was different in this country. But that's a perfect record. It's a good one. Essential Who record. Get it? Uh, we get another solid Coverdale, Glenn Hughes, Tommy Bolin. Fucking is that his name? Tommy Bolin. Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing over here. Deep Purple record. Yeah, they're getting a little more funky, which I think drove Blackmore away at this point. So yeah, it's a fucking good record. We get what do we get over here? Budgie, Bandolier. Um, this is another great one. Like I've been talking about. This is probably the last one I really love. I need to get the ones after this because I never really explored after this record. And I know there's a bunch more. I think the one after this was pretty good. But this one is great. Slip Away. But then I love the last two songs in this. And I don't even think they really even need to be two parts. But I mean, because of the fucking name of it, it makes sense. But the last two songs are called Napoleon Bona Part 1, Napoleon Bona Part 2. Huh. These guys are funny. So we are going to retire the Budgie box set now. We've made it through. Like I said, this is worth it. You probably get it for $26. It's got 3 Budgie albums in it. And then if you can find the first one or first two, I think there's 1 or 2 before this. Those are good as well, as we've talked about. But yeah, Budgie, we're probably going to, that's probably the last one we talk about for now, because I'm not really familiar with the ones after it. Thanks for coming along, guys. UFO Force-It. Another one of my favorites. And if you're a UFO fan, you know about all these deluxe reissues they've done of these records. They always do a great job. There's always great extra songs on here. The books are always filled with just cool stuff and pictures and stories and posters. Folds out into this thing. Did I touch the microphone? But yeah, I got Phenomenon up there, and I have Heavy Pettin'. Then of course the live, like the 4/6 disc one or whatever the fuck it is. But they've done a great job, and this is one of their best. UFO Force-It. Shoot, Shoot, Let It Roll. Mother Mary. And then it's got a live set from the record plant in 1975, which has Doctor Doctor and Rock Bottom, and yeah, these are all good sets. What else did we get? The Scorpions released In Trance in 1975. The Scorpions get pretty heavy here. They drop those sort of epic long songs for more, short rock and affair. I mean, there's still a lot of. They were sort of the masters of slow songs, but really deep and heavy songs, And but I think this is the record where they really sort of mastered their sound, and yeah, this is not their best or an essential record, but I think it's a fun, great record. Another one. See, I had this one out too. Maybe there's a pile of these records somewhere that I missed, because we also get Foghat, Fool for the City, which, yeah, I like Foghat. Whatever, not a fucking great. They're not like one of the best bands, but one of those good bluesy boogie rock bands from the 70s. And of course this record has Fool for the City and Slow Ride, 2 fucking great songs. But that's I don't know, the rest of the records get a couple of good ones. And I own probably half of their fucking records over here, so who am I kidding, trying to talk them down. Let's close this one out with a live record. I know we don't really talk about live records here, even though we did earlier tonight. But I would be remiss to talk about 1975 and not pull this fucking thing. I'm sorry, I swore again. Blue Oyster Cult, On Your Feet or On Your Knees. 75 minutes of perfectly executed fucking rock music from, the masters of that. Look at this shit. And these songs are best experienced live. Those first 3 records, if you can't afford to get all those 3 records, just go buy this and, go from there. And then you might want to go back. And that's how, this is another one of those bands where I heard this record from my old boss at Rounder Records, Mike Annis, and I told this story before. And then went back and got all those studio ones, which he did play those as well. But the versions of, the Subhuman on this and 7 Screaming Disbusters, And then, of course, fucking Hot Rails to Hell on here. And sometimes, the production on this is, you don't know how you feel about it. And then And then you hear their version of the red and the black in here, and you're like, oh, okay. Because the performances fucking shine through on this. And it's just, I don't know. It's fucking, live records in the 70s were a dime a dozen. But this fucking one, sorry. How you doing? You all right? The Witch only comes out at night, and it's night here. But this record is one of the better of all those live records. I'd say essential. What say you? All right. I know I'm missing a lot of records here. On my playlist here, I had Parliament comes out with Mothership Connection. Thin Lizzy Fighting I missed. What else? I think we hit everything. Oh, Parliament, Chocolate City, yeah. But I think we hit most of what we needed to hit here. And 1976 is going to be, we can shut that. It's going to be a lot of fun because, like I said, we're being introduced to AC/DC. The Ramones are coming along. We got more Kiss, and then I got some people that are going to come on for some. I got a guy for 1978, 1980, 1991. And I might, message some other people for some of the other years. But as it is now, I think we're good. 1975, that closes it out. This may have been longer than some of the other ones. I feel like it is, which is fine. I'm awake. I like talking about this stuff with you guys. I'm glad I can tell these stories while I can. And I appreciate the subscribers here and you in general. So thanks again for watching.